Okay, now this is the same story continued. I found where it was it's a light and or dark, and two sides, especially the geometric division of light and dark, each one facing 124 four-sided squares toward the other, divided by a line of what we might, for lack of a better suited phrase, a line of scrimmage. At the same time that the 124 four-sided square of black, as well as light, incubated a second prototypal defense posturing line of scrimmage. The professor was now turning the subject matter of the class toward the quest for the four elemental dimensions that geometrically applied postulate from the ethical standpoint a stronger human sense of conscience toward other people. One of the college students, a wide-eyed 21-year-old girl, who at the present time was attempting to interface a circular and yet anatomically deconstructive, geometrically configured mechanism co-involving motion and the abrupt transcendence of spatial laws from its never-before-seen prototype, and thereafter metabolically reconstituting the same component parts, generically essential to the prototype unified whole of an objectively human-created mechanizations, subdivided beneath the overseen prototype, raised and waved her hand with great and genuine enthusiasm. "Are you Professor Stanwell?" she asked him, her voice cracking slight with unconcealed admiration, attempting to humanize geometric perfection and anthropomorphically as it would be done within the shared limits characterizing higher mathematics, and then interfuse all this linguistically. Kind of like, well, Carol, quickly added the professor, at present, when I am extremely concerned and worried about is the overflowing human need for material wealth over the well-being of our neighbors near and far. But, asked Raphael, the future aerodynamics engineer, where, Professor Stanwell, does the anthropomorphizing of the game of chess fit in with the potential realization of world peace? Because, if you guessed right, Raphael, it is the game of chess. It's just along with other sports. Most people are fascinated with sports. Adrenaline and blood pressure rise and lower when a person either views or participates in a particular sport. But almost the exact same thing happens to many of us when we see, especially during news broadcasts, horrific and cruel acts being criminally perpetrated. If you want to understand the real message a certain news program is relaying to the general public, and you only have the edited version of a particular broadcasted event to rely on, pay close attention to the cuts. There might be a 3-camera interfusing of heavily edited chop job that completely destroys the historic relevance of what's really being said. Pay particular attention to the last word immediately preceding each edit and the rising and lowering of that particular person's voice. Their facial expressions, too. Professor Stanwell, one of the most brilliant minds teaching at Split River Junction College, had one of the most extreme manifestations of ADHD, which added all the more to his nonlinear genius of his present curriculums. Chapter 2. The orbits of the planets in a complementary macro rhythm seemed to, at least on the simile-driven relative level of motion, create an orbit much like the orbiting of the negatively charged electron in the nuclei of the atomic center, which houses the positively charged proton, which is usually 20,000 times the size of its orbiting counterpart. The basic reality holding together the physical universe, though, had been following a significantly altered orbital flux since late 1945, linking in unison the second, third, and fourth dimension, which since then more so overlapped one another, seeping particles of pollutants from the first 3 dimensions in a nonlinear back and forth light wave, as well as a side-to-side sound wave abnormalization of the different directions light and sound usually and had previously with all accurate certainty followed until then, the fluctuation of this abnormality grew more so apparent through the earliest traces of our universe as seen through the strongest telescopic lenses. And that's the beginning of this new tale. It will be called The Physics of Professor Stein. God bless everyone. Peace, love.